Hey everyone, it's Matt Armstrong and welcome to The Pen Habit. It's been a few weeks since I've done any videos. It's been a crazy few weeks for me, so kind of a quick follow-up on why my videos haven't been coming out as quickly as I'd like. Been going through some health issues. I've been got a really bad attack of kidney stones. Had to have the lithotripsy or the shockwave procedure to break them up and pass them. If you've never done that, let me just say it is a miserable, miserable experience. I don't recommend it to anybody. I also, in addition to my regular day job as a development operations manager for a tech company, I also have and run an audiobook company. So I sometimes do the narration, sometimes I'm directing or doing the production work on it. So I've had a few projects there that have taken a lot of my time, and I just haven't had a lot of time to work on the pens. So things are starting to calm down a little bit. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity to do some more of these videos and get them out for you. So I had a question come in, or rather this was a question that was on one of the forums that I visit, the FP Geeks forum. And if you're new to fountain pens and you don't know FP Geeks, know FP Geeks. It's a great website. They do a podcast and a video podcast, and they have, in my opinion, probably the best forum out there on the internet for fountain pen users right now. Really great folks. I've only been a member there for a few weeks, but already I've learned a ton of information. And if you're looking for people to correspond with or things like that, great place to go. They are not paying me to say this. I'm just a fan. So the question that was posted on the forum was, what does your fountain pen habit look like? How do you use your pens? So I've been thinking a lot about this, and there are a few things that I do on a regular basis. So for starters, and the whole reason I got into fountain pens was I wanted to journal. So I went out and bought some journals. This happens to be the Leuchtturm 1915. I think this is the medium size. It's kind of an A5 size. And I try to write at least one page in the journal every night. I've also started writing a lot of letters, and this is new to me. I used to write letters a long time ago, back before email became an everyday presence in my life, and it's kind of gone by the wayside. And I've had a lot of fun with that. Family members, friends I haven't connected with for a long time. So do a lot of letter writing. I use paper and a pen to take notes in almost all of my meetings at work. I used to carry an iPad with a keyboard. I don't do that anymore. I just take my notes with me, and I find that I remember the meetings. I get a lot more accomplished. I'm less distracted. So I do that, and then I've just recently gotten into the vintage fountain pen world and done some antique shopping to find a few things. In fact, let me duck out here. I found this interesting little bottle. This is a 32-ounce bottle of Scrip number 232 permanent writing fluid from the, I think it's sometime from the 50s. Just saw this in an antique store for $10. I loved it, and it's still got ink in the bottom. I haven't used any yet, but that's on my to-do list. So I've been doing that, finding some old pens and collecting. Man, I'm having a lot of fun. This is a great hobby. It can be an expensive hobby if you let it become one, and I have. But it's a great hobby, and I'm really having a great time with it. So anyway, let's dive into today's pen, shall we? It's this pen, and this is a little different than any pen I've ever used before. This is a Ranga Ebonite dip pen, and it's different in a couple of ways. First of all, this is the first Ebonite pen I've ever used, and in case you don't know what Ebonite is a hard rubber. It's been around for a long time. It used to be what a lot of fountain pens were made out of, and it kind of fell out of favor for plastics for a while, and now it's becoming a popular item to make pens with once again. This pen is made in India. I believe they're handmade in India, and I got it on eBay for $17.99 plus shipping. So $18, really a steal for a handmade pen. I got to pick which Ebonite I wanted. They had several different options and different finishes, so I picked the olive swirl. And it's just a very well-made, spun on a lathe kind of pen. I got this for a couple reasons. First, I have a lot of ink, and I've started getting a lot of ink samples, doing the ink drop with Goulet Pen Company and things like that. And I find that I'm having a hard time getting through as much ink as quickly as I want to. I don't like keeping more than about 5 of my pens inked up at any one time because I don't want the ink to start drying in the pens or causing problems. And I like to clean out my pens once every week or once every couple of weeks just because I'm anal retentive like that. So this pen was a great option for me to try inks that I wanted to try and not have to worry about filling up a pen in order to use or going through the whole process of cleaning out the pen afterwards. So it's a pretty simple pen, very thin. And what makes it nice is just got a little hole in the end and an Ebonite feed and a nib. And the nice thing about this versus other dip pens like glass dip pens and things like that is with a feed, you can actually put a fair bit of ink in this nib and write. I can get about a third to a half of a page of writing in, depending on how I'm writing, with a single dip in the ink, which is really pretty great, I find. So in general, I really like this pen. It's very pretty. It's a little thinner than I generally like. I like my pens to have a little bit wider of heft on them. But I don't have my ruler in here. Otherwise, I'd give you the measurements. I'll try to put them in the description below. But in general, really nice pen. The only thing I didn't love about this pen, and I'll show you more what I mean in the writing sample, is that the nib that came with it just wasn't that good. It was, I didn't get a choice of nib types. They just sent me one. I found it to be very, very scratchy and not very pleasant to write with. However, good thing is it does take a standard number 5 size nib, and you can get really quite good number 5 size nibs from a whole variety of locations. So I know the Edison Pen Company has number 5 size nibs. Theirs are made by Jovo, if I remember my nib hierarchy correctly, which is a German company, and they're good. They're not very expensive. You can also get Bach nibs from Nibmeister, or from Meister Nibs, I think it is, .com. I'd have to look that up. But and I've used the Bach number 5 medium nib, and it works really, really well. So I'll show you what the stock nib that came with the pen writes like, and then I'll show you what this looks like, this Edison nib that I've got in here now. But in general, really like the pen, really like having a dip pen. It's not something I use all the time, but if you're into pens and you like playing with inks, a dip pen is something you really might want to play around with a little bit more. Just so you can switch inks really, really easily. Clean up as a snap. Just pop the nib and the feed out, rinse them underwater, and you're good to go. And so that's all there is. It's pretty simple, very pretty. The folks at the Ranga Pen Company that I got this from, I think it's Ranga, yes. They did a great job, shipped here in a very interesting package. They actually sewed the package together. I wish I still had it to show you. But I bought them on eBay for, as I said, $17.99. Really, you can't beat that. For a dip pen like this that works as well as this one does, I'm a big fan. So let's take a break and go over and do a writing sample. All right, well, here we are with the Ranga dip pen. And as you can see from this close-up here, I mean, it's really pretty. This is the olive swirl version. And this is, I've currently got the original nib that it came with on here. This the nib says Fellowship right across the top, and you probably can't see that very well. It's hard to see. It wasn't embossed particularly deeply on the nib anyway. Has an Ebonite feed on the bottom. And, you know, as I mentioned in the earlier part, it is a little on the thin side. It's more like writing with a wooden pencil than it is with, you know, if you're used to fountain pens, than writing with a fountain pen. But this Ebonite material is really quite nice. So with the feed and with the original nib, I'll go ahead and do a little bit of writing, and then I'll switch out the nibs to a nib I like a little bit better and do a little bit of writing there. So it has a dip pen. Got to have the ink on board, and this is a fun ink to play around with, and one that is particularly good for dip pens, I find. So just a little bit of dippage there, and we'll get off on some writing. Wait, that didn't come out quite right. We'll start doing some writing. So this is the Ranga 8 dip pen. And I would say that this nib is very much a fine, if not an extra fine. It's not labeled in either way. So, but it is very fine, and it is pretty scratchy. This is the ink. If you may recognize the bottle, the little gold seal here. This is J. Urbain 1670 Rouge Hematite. And If you follow inks at all online, you may notice that this is an ink that a lot of people really like, but that they don't often use in their pens because it's got a lot of gold sheen to it, and there are, it's like gold flecks in the ink itself. So a dip pen is a really great way to use an ink like this. If you're afraid of it clogging up your regular pens, a dip pen, especially one that's as inexpensive as this one is, generally, I mean, it's a great way to use inks that you normally wouldn't put in your other pens. And as always, of course, the paper. We are looking at Rhodia dot pad, which is an 80-gram paper. All right. Let's just do a little bit of writing. Little scriptural reference there. I think that's how it goes. It's been a long time since I've looked that one up. And you can tell, I mean, for a dip pen, I've actually been able to write a fair bit without running out of ink. The fact that this has a feed actually means that it can hold a fair bit of ink, so you don't have to dip it regularly. Excuse me. The nib that comes with the pen, as I mentioned, is very fine and very, very inexpensive and very, very scratchy. I mean, let me move the microphone just a little bit so you can hear this. I generally don't like scratchy at all. So this, I mean, it doesn't feel like it is digging into the paper. It's smooth-ish, but there's some tooth and some noise, and it doesn't feel smooth. I like smooth. But, I mean, you can see how much writing I am able to do. I have not yet dipped the pen a second time. So that's the thing I really, really like about this pen. That, and the fact that it uses standard number 5 nibs. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out, just grab a paper towel here. And if I grab the nib and the feed and pull them out, take the feed out, and I'm just going to go ahead, leave the old nib in there. And this is just a standard number 5 German, or it's an IPG nib. It's probably Taiwanese made or Chinese made or something like that. And just align the feed and the nib and squeeze them back together. And now I've got a much nicer nib to work with. So I'll go ahead and dip that in the ink here. Get it really saturated. And we'll do a little bit of writing. Now, this is one of the IPG nibs that came with my my original first 3 pens. The hand-turn ones that I got from the Market Pen Maker at Pike Place Market in Seattle. Talked about in my very first 2 videos, I believe. This is one I have done a little bit of work with to make it write a little bit more wetly, and I've smoothed out the nibs just a little bit. But it's a cheap nib. This is not an expensive high-end nib by any stretch of the imagination. Now, you can buy nibs, number 5 nibs from the Edison Pen Company. I know Goulet sells Edison number 5 nibs. Meister Nibs has nibs from Bach, which the Bach number 5 nibs that I've used, I've actually really liked. But as you can tell, this is much smoother. It's a medium nib, so it writes much more wet. But even still, this is a single dip. No, you try doing this with a glass dip pen. It's just not going to work out that well. So I really, I like this pen for a lot. Now, what would I use a pen like this for? I would not use this for, let's say, writing a letter generally. But if you're the kind of person who does ink tests, I keep an ink journal, for instance, and you want to do comparables, something like this works really well when you don't want to ink up a whole pen, or you want to test an ink, but you don't want to ink up a whole pen in order to do it. Uh, I like this. I like the fact that it has an Ebonite feed. I like the fact that the body's made out of Ebonite. It feels really nice. It's well turned. And for 18 bucks, shipping included, you can't beat this price. You might want to add a nicer nib to the pen, but frankly, the nib would probably be worth more than the pen itself. But in general, I really like this Ranga dip pen. I bought mine on eBay, but they may be available elsewhere. But for 18 bucks, how can you go wrong? So anyway, this is the Ranga Ebonite dip pen. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you here next time on The Pen Habit. Bye.